So we have some examples already posted. So I will just go through these dialog boxes quickly and then spend a little bit more time on having our own custom dialog box, just to remind you what we have done last session. So if I just want to display an error or a warning or an information message to the user, JavaFX comes with a built-in class called alert. So all I do, I create an instance of that class and choose what type of alert I want to give to the user. It could be information alert, it could be an error alert, it could be confirmation alert. And then I set the title. This is the title. Whatever you put in the title will be shown in here. This is the header text. Whatever you put in there will show beside this icon here. And this is the actual text will show in the dialog. And then depending on the type of dialog, if it's an information or warning or error, the user will just get an OK button. If it's a confirmation, they will get an OK and cancel. Okay? All right, so let me show you this. So the example of dialog boxes is under _4 examples. If I run this, it's easy here. I have buttons. When I click them, I'll get different dialog boxes. So information dialog, very easy. Just create an instance of alerts and then show this alert to the user. The error dialog, exactly the same. The only difference, information dialog has a blue exclamation mark icon, and in the error dialog you get a cross red with a red background icon. So that's the only difference. In terms of programming, they are exactly the same. So let me show you programmatically how this is done. So if I go to my controller and then go to, let's say, information dialog. So information dialog, if I go there, all I do, I create an instance of alerts, and the alert type I provide here, I put information. Yeah. I can also put warning or error, either way. So the only difference between them is the icon you see here. That's the only difference, is this icon. The rest is exactly the same. Then once I configure my dialog by setting the title, setting the header title and the content text, I can show and wait. Because a dialog by definition is a window that pops up, the user needs to deal with it and close it, then they can go back to the main window. That's why we call it a dialog in the first place. So it cannot be more clear than this. They choose the right choice, in my opinion, of the method name, show and wait. You show the dialog and wait for the user to take action. In the case of information and a warning and error, there is the user just clicks the OK. Now, the other type of dialog, such as a confirmation dialog, still uses the same alert class. You create an instance of alerts, but this time the type will be confirmation. The alert type will be confirmation. And here the behavior is slightly different. I no longer just get an OK, I also get an OK cancel. And here the user have a choice. So after I show and wait, I decide what to do based on the choice. If the user clicks OK, I proceed. Usually I listen for the OK. If the user clicks OK, I proceed with the action. If they click cancel, maybe I do not. Yeah. So this is very common in case the user wants to delete something. Usually it's not a good idea to just go ahead and delete it. Ask them for confirmation. And this is an example where you will use a dialog box like this. Okay. The implementation of this, if I go to show confirmation dialog, it's still the same set of code, except in here, the alert type is a confirmation. And then I'll show and wait. Now, in show and wait, I return this show and wait will return me an object. Show and wait will return me an object. And what is the type of the object? Optional button type. Optional button type, which means this is useful because once the user closes the dialog box, I get either an OK or a cancel. Or I might get nothing if they close using the cross. I mean the close on the top. So that's why it is the way they have designed it. It returns you an optional button type. And then what do I do with this optional button type? I'll go to this, I put it in a variable. In this case, I name this variable is confirmed. Well, you can name it whatever you wish. And then I say, get me the value of this variable. And if it is an OK, then do this. If otherwise, do this. Yeah. So that's how this is done. So to summarize, the only difference here when I say the alert type is a confirmation, the user will get a dialog box with an OK and cancel. And when I do show and wait, I'll get back an object. What is the type of that object? Optional button. I'll go to that object that is returned and do the test based on that. I'll say, get me the button that was clicked, and then compare it with this button type OK. If the user clicks OK, this is what I will do. Otherwise, this is the action I will do. In this scenario, I'm just set in the text of the label. If it's OK, I'll say the user selected OK. Otherwise, I'll say the selected cancel. The user selected cancel. Is clear? Okay. Now, there are other dialog boxes, maybe not very useful, not very common. This one is a text dialog box. In here, what we have here, in a text dialog box, okay, I really need to stop. All right, so in here, what I have here, this is an input dialog box. But the reason why it might not be so useful, because you can only enter one small piece of information, in most cases, that's not very realistic. But in case you have this scenario, you don't need to build your own dialog. It's already built in. You can just make use of it. Password, but usually you give one user one dialog box that has the username and the password, not in multiple steps. In UI design, usually the less clicks, the better. So you don't want, if you want to ask the user 3 things, don't give them 3 little dialog boxes. It's not, in terms of user experience, it will be very poor user experience, because the less clicks, the better. But still, just for completeness, we will see how this is done. So the way it is done, in here, it's not an alert box. It is called a text input dialog. Text input dialog. And in this text input dialog, I can set the title. I can set the header text, and then I'll show and wait. So that's what I mean. In here, you see this one is added to the title, and this one, enter your name, is added here next to the icon. And then I get a text box. And the user will type in whatever they wish, and then say OK. Now, when I do show and wait, and when this returns, it gives me back an optional string. So the return type of text input dialog is an optional string. Because why it is an optional string? Because the user might close it from here, or they might cancel, so I don't get any input. That's why it's an optional string. Now, what I do with that optional string, it's up to me. In this case, I open the dialog box, and then get my optional string and say if present. You see, this is a nice way to do it. So I'll go to this object and say if present, do something with it. So if present, and then I declare another variable to get the value the user have entered. This is a lambda expression. And then in this case, I'm just taking that username, concatenate it with this string username, and then displaying this in the label. So if I go here, show you again. So if I say Ali here, click OK, I took this, whatever the user have entered, constructed a string, concatenated string, and placed it in the label. Yeah. Now, if the user didn't enter anything, they put cancel, or they put close the dialog, of course, this will not change. We will do nothing. So to do so, I go to this object and say if present, which means if the user entered it, do this action, otherwise don't worry about it. Okay. Now the last one that is built in is a choice dialog. Very similar to text input dialog, except in here, instead of having a text box, I have a drop down, a combo. I have a combo box to select from. So once I select, again, I do OK or cancel. Definitely this will return something optional. Optional in this case because these are books. So it will return an optional book. If it's present, like in here, if it's present, I take it and display it in the label. If it's not, if I cancel, I don't do anything. See here, I didn't change. So let me show you how this is done. If I go to choice box, first I create instances of book, 3 instances of book, add them to the list, add them to a list, and then I don't really need this one, just a second. Then basically what I'm doing here, I'll go ahead and create an instance of choice dialog. This is a built-in choice dialog built-in JavaFX. Create an instance of it and say, oh, by the way, create an instance, I'll be giving you books. I'll give you books as an input and also give you the default value. The default value means will be auto-selected. When I open the dialog box, which of these books will be auto-selected? This one. Okay, so you put it first, and then you put the other one here. Okay? Because it is a dialog, I set the title, I set the header text, and the content text. Yep. And then show and wait. Now, because I passed in books, I will get back a book. But it's optional because the user might cancel or might close the dialog. Yep. So that's the reason I have it here as optional. Don't be too impressed with this. I don't see it as realistic as I told you. Be aware of it, but in real life, you will definitely need your own dialog box. If you are using dialog boxes to input something from users, most likely you need a custom one. Yes? So that's what we saw last time, and I will review it quickly now. It's clear? So in here, exactly the same. I show the dialog box and then wait for the user to select and click OK or cancel. That's why the return type is an optional book. If it is present, I do something with it. In this case, all I'm doing, I'll concatenate the book name with this text here and I'd display it in the message label, in the scenario. Is clear? So we have dialog boxes that are built in JavaFX. The first 3, which are more interesting, you just use an alert. Create an instance of alert and then configure it. Set what type of alert you want, what is the title, the text, and so on. And there are another 2 that are not so useful, but be aware of them. The input text box allows you to enter one piece of information, or the choice dialog, which allows you to select among choices. In all cases, it will return you an optional object. You check if it's present, if that object has some value. If it has, you do something with it. Otherwise, usually you won't do anything because the user has canceled. Okay, but more realistically, as we saw in the last session, more realistically, you might create your own dialog. And this is what we did in this example that we discussed last session. Here is my own dialog, which is a student view. So if I showed you this in Sim Builder, you can see here the root of this dialog is a pane dialog. So it's a normal grid layout. It's a grid layout with rows and columns. And then I put everything in a pane dialog. This way I can show it in a pop-up window the user can do. So this is more realistic. See here I'm asking for multiple things. And I can have whatever I wish. Date speakers, drop-down, combo boxes, whatever I wish. And I can still show it as a dialog. So to show it as a dialog, yes, to show it as a dialog, here it is. So if I go here to my students controller, yes, so as I showed you last time, I create an instance of, you may need this in your project, so please be careful here. So I create an instance of FXML loader. I go ahead and load my view that has a dialog pane. And then I also go to the FXML loader and ask it, please give me also the controller associated with the view. Remember, each view has an associated controller. So I ask the loader not only to load the dialog into this variable, but also to give me the controller that is associated with this dialog. Why do I need the controller? Because I need to initialize the view. I need to pass in here what I'm doing. I am passing a student's object to this dialog. How do I pass the student's object to the dialog? I need to get the controller associated with the dialog and then use it to pass this student's object to the controller. You know, the user experience goes like this. Let me just show you how the user perceives this or uses this. Here it is. So if I run this example, so I have a list here of students. I select one. Now, when I select, I know which students I want to update, let's say. So I have a student's object at my hand. What I want to do with this student's object, take it, pass it to the dialog box. The dialog will take it, will take the student's object, bind it with this with the text boxes and show it to the user. So that's what's happening. See here, like if I click update, I get my dialog box already filled. That's why I ask the loader, please load my dialog box, my dialog pane. Give me the controller. Why do I ask for the controller? So I can pass to it the object I want to update. So because I cannot ask the view, remember the view is a DOM, it doesn't have any logic. The view only shows the user interface. Okay, so that's what's going on here. And then I'll go ahead and create a dialog object, set the dialog pane of this dialog, and then set the title, and then wait, show, and wait. So a dialog always to deal with the dialog and do show and wait. I'll wait for the user to update or do whatever they wish. And then in here, I'll say, oh, what button was clicked? Was it the OK button? If yes, I'll check whether I'm doing add or doing update. If I'm doing update, I don't need to do any action because the updates will be already reflected in my UI. Take a look at this. Let me just, you see here, if I do update, if I change this one, can you see once I change it, it's already changing in my, thanks to binding, it's already changing in my list view or in my table view. So when I click OK, I don't need to do anything. But in the case of add, it's different. In case of add, I have an empty object, I fill it. Then when I click OK, I'll take this new object and add it to the observable list associated with the table, and that new object will show up in the table view. So if I click OK, and it shows up here. That's why in this code here, I'll ask, did the user click OK? Yes. If they click OK, I will say, oh, what mode I am in? Am I in the add mode or update mode? Because remember, add and update, I'm using exactly the same form. I don't want to spend my time creating two forms, one for add, one for update. I'm using exactly the same form for both cases. So that's why I ask here if in case of add, I'll go to the student's observable list and add the student that the user have entered. And this way, once I add it, it will show in the table view.